It's been 30 years. 30 years of saying yes to the passion that God has placed on the inside of me to lead. You see, it's a journey of leading others to find their God-given purpose. And because of that, you have this feeling on the inside. This feeling that leadership is our responsibility to do everything within our power to help others achieve their God-given purpose. My name is Benjamin Stewart, and welcome to my podcast, Leading from the Edge. So today, I want to talk about how our decisions as leaders affect those that are around us. I think we live in this place that we hope is probably what we'd say we do, but we live as if our decisions don't affect people. Now, we want it to affect people the right way, but we don't want our decisions to cost anybody anything for some reason, right? We're backwards, at least a lot of us are. And if this doesn't resonate with you, or why don't you keep listening, because it may resonate and you may not think it does. But I want to read, we've been reading in Exodus as a family. Last time we were in Job, I know, but we're reading in Exodus as a family. And I got to chapter 5, and it blew me away when it comes to leadership. I've read chapter 5 so many times. I've read through the Bible, 30 or 40 times. But this is not the typical story of leading the nation of Israel out of captivity. No, this is the part where it gets worse before it gets better. And if we're in chapter 5, it starts with verse 1 with Moses and Aaron going to Pharaoh. And they said, "This is what the Lord God of Israel says, let my people go, so they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh says, "Well, who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, and I'm not going to let Israel go." But then he starts fussing at Moses and Aaron about them taking people away from the labor, get back to work. And so Pharaoh, in response to Moses and Aaron listening to God and going and talking to him, this is what Pharaoh's response is. He says to his overseers in charge of the people, "You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Do not reduce the quota, for they are lazy, and that is why they are crying out, 'Go, let us go and sacrifice to our gods.' Make the work harder for the people, so they will keep working and pay no attention to the lies." And so what happens is the Israelite overseers, they go and they go and talk. They go and talk to Pharaoh, and they're talking back and forth. And what ends up happening is they talk to all the Israelite people, and they tell them, "Hey, this is what you keep saying. Let's go sacrifice the Lord. Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, and you must produce your full quota of bricks." Now, the Israelite overseers realized they were in trouble when they were told, "You are not to reduce the number of bricks required for each day." So when they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them. And they said, "May the Lord look upon you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials and have put a sword in the hand to kill us." So here's the deal. This is a huge leadership lesson, right? Because most leaders I know, we lead from a place of insecurity. In other words, we make decisions on what makes the least amount of trouble instead of leading from a God-first mentality. Now, we would never admit that. We would say we're leading with a God-first mentality, but we're going around to make it as easy as possible on people, so not to upset people, so that they will receive it the best. But what we're missing here is sometimes the decisions that we make, the people that we're leading, it's not going to make sense to them at first. Not only that, it may make it harder on them. So there's a couple of points I want us to learn from this story. Number one is this. As a leader, you have to understand the gravity of your position. Moses and Aaron left God's presence to go tell Pharaoh to let God's people go. And Pharaoh then brings down the wrath of them asking for that on the people of Israel. Why? Because Moses and Aaron were obedient. We have to accept that our decisions as leaders they're very important. But they are always going to affect more than just ourselves. As much as you want it to just be you, it's not. It's going to end up affecting those that you lead on the job, those who look up to you, those who you lead at church, those who you lead in your own family. And while the end result is something that we end up looking forward to, we don't get to decide the path. As much as you want to separate the worlds of your decisions as a leader and your family, or your decisions as a leader and the people that you lead, or your decision to follow God and what he tells you to do and the people who have to follow you, it's not separated. We get to realize that every decision we make is feeding the future of those that we lead, even if it includes more hardship. So we have to understand the gravity of our leadership. Number two, we have to do what God says and no extras. I can think of so many stories where I've gotten a word from the Lord and I turned it into like 25 words. I decided how it was going to fit because I looked at my current circumstances. I looked at what God was telling me, and the two didn't seem to mesh well. And so I decided that, well, if this happens, and if this happens, and if this goes this way, then I could totally see that happening, God. Yes, I'm excited. That means I need to not do A. I need to do B, C, and D so that A will happen. And a lot of times we just need to do what God says. We only know this through Christ, though. Whether as a business owner, it's letting somebody go, whether it's correcting somebody, or decisions that you are making, sometimes we don't know that there are going to be unintentional consequences. Well, we see them as unintentional. I kind of wonder sometimes if it's not just perfectly planned by God. A lot of times as leaders, we want to sugarcoat situations, right? We're trying to get people to either come along or get along. I mean, think about that. As business leaders, as church leaders, as leaders in our own home, sometimes we make a decision and then we go around trying to paint the picture of how little it will affect them. And we are robbing ourselves of our position of authority, and we are robbing the people we are leading of what they need to overcome. It's like we're trying to tell people how they should feel and respond. And in my book, that's called manipulation. So stay away from being the person who goes around trying to keep everyone happy. It doesn't work. Now, I'm not saying that you're to be harsh or rude in what you do, right? Actually, I'm simply saying don't make an excuse. One of my rules in teaching people how to fire somebody, I know that sounds rough, but I've been privileged to let go of about 100 plus people. Only one has stayed mad at me, and I don't know if they're still mad at me. But one of my rules in firing people is to not apologize. Only time we apologize, we don't say, hey, I'm sorry, I've got some bad news for you. No, only time we apologize is when we have failed them. And now listen, leader, listen to me carefully. Don't be the one that always puts yourself in the position of being the person that is wrong. I know this position really, really well because I do it all the time. Don't do it. It is robbing people of them facing up to what they need to go through. All because we want to make them feel good about us. And I look back at those firings, those hard decisions. It's always because it's the best thing to do. And eventually it's the best thing to do for everybody. But let's look back at Exodus chapter 5. Let's go to verse 20. It says that when they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them. And they said, may the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. I mean, I think about it. They were actually waiting. Like, they're like, okay, yep. Why? Because they didn't like how it felt. Moses and Aaron knew that this was going to come. Moses and Aaron knew that this was not going to go well, right? But not knowing that this was part of the process for these people to become a nation. Not knowing that this working and this pushing through all this was actually part of the process of them seeing incredible miracles from God. Pharaoh cracking down on the nation of Israel and refusing to let them go, turning into miracle after miracle, so that when the nation of Israel had to leave, when they had to step up into this new place, this new authority, this new freedom, that they would have enough of God moments in front of them, they would get them over the hump. I really feel like God knew what he was doing. I know we all should feel that way. We should always feel that way. But if we challenge ourselves, a lot of times we don't. So point number 3 is get over yourself. And what do I mean by getting over ourselves? Well, all too often we live in this lie that our decisions don't affect anyone. Or better, that no one will be affected by our leadership. In fact, we have problems with it causing anybody grief. And then we get stuck in this pleasing path. And I remember when I was watching Shark Tank. You may not watch Shark Tank. If you haven't watched Shark Tank, don't worry about watching it. But there's this investor by the name of Kevin O'Leary, and he is just the most ornery, hard-nosed, rude person in the room, to the point that he would say to people who don't agree with him, "Get out of here, you're dead to me." He would literally say, "You're dead to me." And I still think it's harsh, but it used to offend me. I used to be like, man, this guy is rude. Like, why is he even on this show? But then God kind of challenged me. And when I started looking at my life of leading, I realized I carry a lot of stress, a lot of troubling times. It turned into heart issues, literally spending time in the hospital from stress-induced physical response to stress, right? I was literally about to go on vacation, and we had rented an RV because ours wasn't working. And I was coming home to get ready when I had double vision. And I don't know if you've ever had double vision. It was scary. Like, my heart started racing. Everything around me started getting dark. I could not see straight because everything was doubled. And I thought, I'm literally going to die right here driving this RV, trying to get away for some time away. Like, I took it too far. I was stressed so much. I'm taking vacation and I'm going to die before I get to go on vacation. So I took the next exit. I pulled the RV into a parking lot of Silver Cross Hospital in Chicago. I walked into the ER and immediately they admitted me. Before I knew it, I'm getting all these tests done to check the condition of my heart, EKG, heart monitor, stress test, a dye test. And at one point, chest x-rays. At one point, I'm literally running on a treadmill in my dress shoes because that's all I had. That's all I had on. And let me tell you the end result. The doctor came in and he asked me, "Ben, so what do you do for a living?" I knew I was in trouble. I said, "I'm a pastor." And he smiled and he said, "You have to change some things, Ben." So I go back to this impression of Kevin O'Leary. And if what he says is true, that when someone doesn't want to do business the way that he wants to do it, or do business with them, that they're dead to him, then I bet he's living a much more stress-free life than I was. Now, that is way extreme, but just think about it. Think about the power of letting go of what someone thinks of you, especially in leadership. Because see, every hurt feeling, every decision that cost somebody something, I would stress over that. I'd stress over what they thought. If they were hurt because of me and my decisions, could I have done it better or different? And every time I could find what I could have done better or done different, and I would end up throwing myself in the middle of the fault. But when I read what Jesus told the disciples, now this isn't what he told himself. This is what he told the disciples, the imperfect group of 12. Mark chapter 6, verse 11. He says, "And whoever will not receive you nor hear you, When you depart from there, shake off the dust under your feet as a testimony against them. Assuredly, I say to you, it will be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. Oh, man. Like, we feel like if this was like right on, then we wouldn't have to worry about anything. But we're still like most leaders, right? Even when you know that this was the right thing, even when you know that you're doing what God told you to do, we still get stuck in ourselves and we say that it's about others, but it's really killing us on the inside. I say to you and to me, stop. Like, stop doing it. Let's go back over the points. How do I understand the gravity of my leadership? Number one, I need to pray. Get in the Spirit, allow Him to tell you the things to come. Now, I know that can sound a little silly or weird, but it's simply allowing the Spirit of God to take your ability to predict, and He adds His infinite wisdom and knowledge to it. Very rarely is it a vision or a complete picture, but many times it comes as a hunch or a feeling about the situation that you are going to want to pay attention to. Trust me, you want to be on the side of hearing what God thinks about the situation before you go into absolute decision making. So how do I understand the gravity of my leadership? I have to pray. Also, too, ask God to show you the gravity of the decision you're making. Like, not for excuses and not to deflect, but instead so that you can truly own the weight of that decision. Point number 2 was do exactly what God tells you. So how do we do exactly what God tells us? We write it down. Write it down as soon as you feel like He's telling you to do something. Write it down before you start planning it out, before you start figuring out what it's going to take to get there, before you start kind of finagling and moving things around so that that particular thing He told you is for right now or for that relationship or for that decision. Like, let it be what He told you. Then spend time with Him with it, and then do all the planning you want. All the preventing, the game plan to make the pivot or decision. And then there's a third part to this. So how we're going to do exactly what God tells us, we're going to write it down and give it to Him. Then we're going to plan it out the way we want to. Then bring it back to God and ask Him, God, are you in this planning? Is this what I should be doing? What do you want me to take out of it? What do you want me to keep in? And then as a father, business leader, or pastor, you get to move forward only when you know that it's God's plan. Then point number 3 was get over yourself, right? Get some emotional strength. We talk about this in my podcast all the time because I believe it is the number one hindrance to being a great leader. Our own limiting beliefs, even more than our blind spots. Truth is, you're not an imposter. You're not a failure. You're not a crazy person who makes irrational decisions. You're also not perfect. Let me go back one. You're not a crazy person who makes irrational decisions. Why not start trusting some of the ways that God has designed you? But you're also not perfect. And I'm going to repeat that again, third time. You're not perfect. So how do we get over ourselves? Well, without getting too much into the God-given philosophy or psychology of how God has designed us, we have to grow in our emotional intelligence to get over ourselves. Emotionally intelligent, deprived people make everything about them. They make every decision about them. They make every person's behavior about them. They make, when they walk into a room and two people stop talking, they make it about them. They make that email that they saw their name at the top a bad email, even though they didn't get to read it. They make that boss who walks out of the room when we walk in, that they're offended with us. That's what emotionally unintelligent people do. We have to allow God to get into every area of our life. If we're going to get over ourselves, we have to, 1, take an honest look at ourselves. Get in the mirror. You've heard me say this 20 times in the last 20 podcasts. Get in the mirror and let God tell you about you. We all learn the same way. We have to see and hear what we need to learn and grow in. So let God show you. Let him speak to you. You also need to get into the Word of God, right? If you're dealing with pride, there are great scriptures that speak to humility. Ask God to humble you. Now, I know for some of you guys, that's like sacrilegious. All my Baptist friends, you're like, I remember one of my really good Baptist friends would say, don't ask God to give you humility because then he's going to humble you. I'm like, yes, ask God to give you humility and let him humble you. Like, who better to learn from about humility than the God who exemplifies and created the word humility? Because he's going to knock us down and it's okay. Why? Because why stay the same? Why stay the same? If you're dealing with the imposter syndrome, go study the life of Moses. Read Exodus. Find someone in the Word of God that you can see the faithfulness of God in his relationship with God, even though he was scared stiff to do anything that God told him to do. I say scared stiff. Obviously, he stepped up. He was later, but you get what I'm saying. Get the scriptures out. Find out from God where you have pride. Also, too, and that's, I know you're saying, wait, imposter syndrome and pride. Did you mess that up, Ben? No. I personally have found that imposter syndrome, insecurities are all based in pride. Why? Well, it gets us withholding God's best for others because we're too busy thinking about ourselves. So how are we going to overcome ourselves? Get over ourselves? Number 1, get before God. Number 2, get in the Word. And number 3, get some good words from mentors, books, coaches, podcasts. Like this podcast, I really hope this podcast creates good fruit for you. Get somewhere so you get it from God, right? Get before God, let him tell you what you need to work on. Then get in the Word and find what Scripture has to say it. And then get some good teaching. Get some good mentors and attack this area, whether it's pride or imposter syndrome or whatever it is. Attack it because God has called you to lead. You got this. You're going to be making decisions that are going to affect people. So instead of acting like it won't, I think the best thing that we can do is own it and grow it. Because you see, leadership, in my opinion, means that every day you're striving to be at least one step ahead. At least one experience in front of those that you have been given the gift of leading. It's not a matter of being the best, and it's not a badge that you get to wear saying, look at me, I'm a leader. It's not even about being the brightest, smartest, quickest to make decision person in the room. It's simply about having the courage to lead. It takes commitment, it takes persistence, and it takes patience. But above all of that, it takes an everyday God experience. My name is Benjamin Stewart. Until next time, go lead from the edge. If you enjoy these podcasts and want to show your support, you can just follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Leading From The Edge. And if you want to connect with me about leadership, family camps, business coaching, simply email me at ben@benjaminstewart.org. Be blessed and behave.